Well, hey everyone. Today I have a special treat for you. Lloyd Fox, thanks so much for coming by.
Thanks for asking me to come by. Gotta accept the invite every now and then, right?
These conversations come about when we talk, and that's actually where this topic came up. And I'm like, hey, you want to come by and shoot a video? And Lloyd's always gracious.
Absolutely.
He's like, sure. So
I think it's a worthwhile message to get out there. I just hate when agents waste your time.
well, I think, it's not a waste of time. And we'll
No, they waste your time. I'll say it. Stop wasting people's time.
Oh, well, let's kind of talk through. So this
Not
is
the sugar off the donut. Be real.
That's right.
No
He's
more
fired up today, guys.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you.
Mm.
This is about pre-qualification forms. So the AAR contract has the PQF form, and the lender completes it. And as part of that, the intentionality behind the form initially was that the lender would show what the borrower could qualify for with regard to the max loan amount. But in reality, that's just not the way that it plays out in everyday business. And so quite often we will have a scenario where we will prepare multiple PQFs for the same borrower at different price points with different loan amounts, even though they could technically qualify for all of them. And I think the rationale to the real estate agents, from the real estate agent's position, is just that they don't want to show that the buyer qualifies for more. But as you and I were talking, you're like, he's got a lot of opinion on this. I'm like, so Lloyd, let's dive into this.
Well, I think when you lead believing that you have to show that your client is topping out, they really can't do anymore, is probably the weakest negotiating strategy that you can possibly have. And I know agents are being taught this by people who don't know how to sell and don't know how to negotiate. And that's the most irritating thing to me, because it sends a poor signal to the seller. It really does. I've yet to work with sellers that just goes, oh my God, how do we help these people out since they just can't really afford our home?
Yeah.
No, I don't have sellers say that.
Right.
I have more sellers talk about, well, if they're topping out, one little change in the market, interest rate, their job, anything, and they're not going to get approved.
Right.
I mean, you've got this pre-qualification form here in Arizona. They get that contingency all the way through. Sellers and listing agents want to work with buyers and buyer agents who are strong to the table, and they can finish. Mm-hmm. There is no value in downplaying what you can do. I would much rather negotiate from a point of strength. So maybe some of you need to work on your negotiating tactics and muscle and come forward and be proud of who you represent and just stand strong. What if I were working with Bezos, Gates, Musk, any of these people with a fortune, and I'm going to come in, well, this is really all they can afford. No. Go forward with, yeah, they have all the money in the world, but they're not going to pay any more than X for the home. That's what they see the value as. Take it or leave it. And that's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And just because any of those people I just mentioned, if they go into Starbucks, does somebody turn around and jack the price up? No.
Right.
They're only going to pay what they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
And it's not based upon capability or net worth. So what you really have is a good client, and you're reducing how they look to the seller.
Right. And in multiple offer scenarios, it matters.
Then forget it.
I mean, but again, the practice has been to adjust the pre-qual letter based on the purchase price. And I think the thing that's so interesting to me is listing agents generally are buyer's agents as well at some point in their career. So they kind of know that this is happening. And then they're calling the lender and saying, well, is this really the max? Like, we don't want to be part of that negotiation. That is between you and the buyer and the seller, the listing agent.
And I've had, in the past, people go, oh, well, hey, I'll just open it up and you fit in whatever amount you want on the pre-qualification form. I'm the agent, not the lender. Why am I filling out the pre-qualification form?
We don't want that.
No. And there are people that have done that. It's like, no, just fill it out, for what? Number one, what are they approved for? 2, what's their budget? Let's be in line with that. Well, let's go ye therefore and shop. I don't need 5 different pre-qualification forms because we're bidding on this one. Oh, this one's lower, this one. Stop. That's just a waste of your time.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very frustrating for people. And again, I think the best thing you can do is be strong for your client, be a quality negotiator, and negotiate like, hey, this is a great buyer. This is what they're willing to pay. If this doesn't work out, fine. We'll move to the next seller. And somebody's going to value these people, like it or not.
Yeah.
But, this is all we can afford. Oh, great. I feel so much confidence in this buyer right now. I just want to move forward with them because they're topping out on every last cent they have.
Yeah.
When they have to close with not only their down payment, their closing costs. Oh, let's talk about reserves. And you got somebody topping out. Can they meet all those qualifications at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I want somebody who can, not somebody who's like, they may or may not have the money to finish. Oh, great. Let's work together.
So Lloyd, we've worked together for a long time, and you are it's an honor.
Sorry. It's the counseling. I know.
Lots of these conversations, guys.
Yeah, the whiskey.
Let's talk through your kind of top 2 or 3 negotiation kind of strategies, because I think just, that's a lost art. And let's walk through how you do it, because I've seen you in action and it's pretty cool to watch.
I'll say the first strategy in negotiating is stop talking. You'd be surprised how much you can learn when you just stop talking. The most people find a tremendous amount of discomfort in silence. And you'd be amazed at what you can find out just from listening and not saying much at all. That would be strategy number 1.
That's a good one.
Use your ears more than your mouth. The other strategy is also understand that, in my experience, the party who typically wins, it's not always, if you want to look at it from a winners or losers standpoint, that the party that typically wins is the party who cares the least in a negotiation. So even if your client cares a lot, you can't overcare. You've got to downplay some of that, because the party who is just willing to walk away typically wins. So that's what you have to present is, hey, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, have a nice day. No problem. We'll work with somebody else.
So keep emotion as much as possible out of the equation. Yeah. And stop talking.
And don't feel like, especially right now, it's a different market. I know every market is different, so every strategy has to be different. Sometimes negotiating in a win is getting the property in like a really hot market. Mm-hmm. So it's a different form of negotiation at that point in time, because you're trying to win the contest. Mm-hmm. If there's 10 offers, you're trying to be that fantastic advocate for your client. In a market like this, when you have a lot more ability to negotiate, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it really is. And in markets like this, speed is not always on your side. It doesn't have to come together right now. Matter of fact, you might just find that you get a phone call a few days later going, my client thought about it, and have you found anything yet? Because they're willing to play ball now. And why is that? Because the other party got a sense of loss, mm-hmm. and they know that the other party has moved on. And so there's a lot of power in inactivity and in silence.
That's gold. Now, do you feel better? I know you came by here talking about this PQF. Do you feel like we've covered it? Is there anything else we want to dive in with regard to the pre-qual form?
No, for listing agents, I'd say really ask the critical questions, because if you get somebody that's playing this game of we're topping out and go, well, maybe your client's just not strong enough to move forward here. And then see if they're the ones that are playing that game, because they're going to be, fear of loss. I sold my client on we need to downplay it, and you kind of call them out on it more than anything else. And as a listing agent, really right now, I'm seeing a lot of shopping, if you will, where buyers are shopping lenders. Unfortunately, not you, but there are a lot of lenders in the market that are going to tell people what they want to hear in order to get their business. And when you go through these pre-qualification forms, you really should be making sure that the boxes that are checked yes are the critical boxes, and follow up with that lender. If you've never worked with that lender in the past, ask some of the critical questions. I know a lender can't give you all the details in the world, but I can ask you things and you have to tell the truth.
Yes.
You can't tell me their exact credit score.
Nope.
But if I say, hey, Kelly, with this client, is their current tri-merge score, their mid score, are they already qualified today, or are some things that need to be worked on in the file?
Yeah.
You've got to answer me directly on that one.
Yep. Absolutely.
Are we looking at a rapid rescore?
No, it's valid.
You got to understand, get together with the lender, quality lender, a lender you trust, and ask them, if you were me, what would you ask?
Yeah.
Do you have all the verification of income? Is there a balance between stated income? Oh, I make X on commissions. Is it verifiable salary that we're playing with? Do you have all the documentation? Have they been in their current role at least 2 years? And these are all things I can ask.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I don't want surprises at the end. And like I said, a lot of lenders, unfortunately, trying to get business right now because business is tight for everybody, they're kind of skirting a lot of the process to appease people to win the business short term.
And on that note, one thing, when you're working with a local lender that is familiar with the pre-qualification form that we're referring to, it specifically says, have we received pay stubs and W-2s and all the things? But you might be getting a pre-qual letter that is more just in a letter format from one of these big national lenders or an out-of-state lender. And so they may not have actually received the documentation yet. And there's no kind of generalized format where they would say in that letter, we received it. Sometimes it's just generic, like, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Smith are pre-qualified up to X dollars. So I think it is absolutely okay as a listing need to reach out, especially when they're not using the pre-qual form.
Right.
Because this holds the lender a little bit more accountable with the fact that, look, you said on this date that you had the pay stubs, and now maybe downstream something's coming up. Now, guys, get it. Please understand, stuff happens.
Have you ever seen a lender get in trouble for that, though?
Not to my knowledge.
Right? But it's useless.
I know, but it's still like your reputation.
But some lenders aren't going to care about their reputation.
That's true.
And this is behind the scenes. And whether their client gets approved, doesn't get approved, it's not like public knowledge.
Yeah. I know, but this is our business.
I understand. But my point is, by asking the in-depth questions, you're going to find out, if you're smart about your questions, just how solid that lender is. And you're also going to find out how solid that buyer is by framing all the questions the right way. And if you smell something that doesn't seem right, trust your gut.
Yes, I would say that. And the other trend I'm hearing from a lending perspective is lenders are actually telling people not to send in their documentation until they're under contract. And I'm like, what? That is risky. Like, you know me well enough to we want it all. And we want it during the pre-qualification phase because there are so many things that are different from what people think. For example, what they make versus really, the hours worked and what they actually make or made or et cetera. So having that documentation really does solidify the pre-qualification form, assuming the lender's reviewed it. They've sent the file through an automated underwriting system if it's that type of loan. Like, they really dug deep. The pre-qual is honestly the most important part of the process, in my opinion.
100%, because unfortunately, most buyers think they know it all, but they really don't. So they may think that they make enough based upon 1 year, but what's the trend in their income?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be factored in if they've had a declining income over the last few years, Or maybe they have a rental property and they think, oh yeah, but I'm $100, in the black on that one per month. Well, but do they understand, most of the time not, that the lender is going to calculate that rental income at 75% of what they're receiving, because the underlying investor is going to hedge their bets on that file.
Yes.
And unless a lender knows all the facts, they really can't advise you completely as to where you line up.
Yeah.
Or tell you what your real rate is.
Yeah. And it's difficult, especially with that type of buyer who really, they're making good money, but let's say that they're 100% commission and they had a great year in 23 and then 24 was, a lower year. And then when you get into commissionable income, it's all an average. So it's not about what I'm making today. It's the historical trend. And if that trend is declining, so let's say 2024 was a big year for them, but then 2025 is starting to decline, guess what? 24 is not really going to matter. We're going to go back in time to try to come up with an average that isn't declining. So there's a lot that goes into this income calculation.
And because even look at people in our business, agents, right?
Yeah.
You had some really good years a few years ago, and you may make enough to pay for this place. But if you're down $150,000, $200,000 on your 1099,
yes,
you may not get approved.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Lloyd, thank you so much for coming by and giving us some wisdom on pre-qualification negotiation, all that fun stuff.
Well, I appreciate you unlocking the door today so I could come in. So that was good.
And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Lloyd. He's fantastic. He's a broker at 1912 Real Estate and just really has a heart to serve and educate. So thanks again.
Thank you.